in a way that staff can put a focus on this area each week. And we're really excited about this tool that we've created for schools. There's always a content area focus each week. And then a staple of our curricula is what we call the character dare process, a way that we can get a workout, putting what it is that we're talking about in the content area into action in a practical way, and creating a space for conversations to happen each week as well. These new lessons were designed in a different way so that they can expand or contract as needed. So our normal lessons were written to be 30 minutes in length, and yet there's some customization that can happen. These newer lessons, there's a 5 to 7 minute version, a 10-minute version. You could even do 30+ minutes on these, but the way that we've designed them in a more interactive way allows you to expand or contract them as needed. Starts with the community building aspect, and one difference in these new lessons is instead of it being just written into the lesson plan, here is the activity we're going to do. What's different is that there's 10 different activities actually that will show up every week, and it gives an element of choice to the students and staff who are implementing them. We've gotten great feedback on this. As an example, if you look in the lower right-hand corner, Deck of Destiny is one of the activities. A class might really like that one. They may choose that one 7 times over the first 16 weeks. And what we would say is, great, do that one, because one, you can do it multiple times, but if it's one that they're actually taking to and are interested in, that is better than just doing it because this is the one that we said you should do this week. So there's an element of choice and ones that you can come back to. Every one of the community building activities has been designed for in-person or virtual. We've already done that lifting for you. If you notice on this one, it's called 6-foot salutation. And the upper left-hand corner, there is a schoolhouse icon. That means that as you're reading this, it was built for in-person. But all you have to do is click on that schoolhouse icon, and it will give you a virtual adaptation of the same activity. Notice on this one in the upper left-hand corner, there is a schoolhouse icon and a computer screen. This means you do not need to do any adapting to this lesson. It was built for a virtual or in-person. It would work as it is designed. The other thing that's unique about these new lessons is that they're more interactive. Many times we're used to slide decks where it's A to Z, that you go in order. These ones can jump around. So in the upper right-hand corner, anytime I click on that icon, it will take me back to the main screen, relationships first, where at that moment, I can jump to any one of those 3 components of the lesson at any time. So an example of that would be, I could just do one question from Deck of Destiny as a community builder, like a start of my lesson that takes 2 to 3 minutes. And then immediately I could jump to the content area by clicking on the brain in the middle of the bottom part there, and it will go right into the content area focus. If we were meeting more than one time in a week, I might come back on the next day that we meet and do a community building activity like picture prompts that I'll show you in a moment, and then immediately jump into the character dare component, which is the weight that's there. This allows us to expand or contract the lessons as needed, much more flexible in the way it's designed. So let me click out of that, and I'm going to come back. With these, there also is an overview video that you can click into at any time that kind of is a walkthrough like I'm doing now to help for fidelity and ease of use. And they're also, just like our normal lessons, every slide deck is in English and in Spanish. So you'll have that as well. The other thing that we've added, especially in pivoting, is we want you to know what is the research on each of these lessons. We have a research scientist, Dr. Brian Smith, who's guiding the work, making sure that what it is that we're doing and implementing is rooted in research. And so you can see the research brief that's there that can help the implementation team and the teachers who are implementing the lessons, as well as there's some links here to documents, things that you could go deeper if you want to in that area. Let me click into the lesson. And I noticed too, I think there might've been a comment in the screen because I'm on a triple monitor. It might show up right now for you a little bit smaller than it would if I was on a single monitor. We will send this out, but know that it would be like a full screen image if you were sharing from like your laptop or your computer. All right, here's lesson 2. It's titled To-Do List versus To-Be List. What this is saying is for the community building component, the recommended activity this week is scavenger hunting. Even though every week there'll be 10 choices that a staff member could choose to do with their students, some staff are going to need the recommendation. They need to be told, this is the one you're going to do. So we always have a recommended one that's there. The content area title this week is To Do versus To Be. And the character dare title this week is Who Will You Become? If I'm the staff member, I click right into it. The objectives are here. The goal is little to no prep to implement, as long as they know how those community building slides work, how the lessons have been designed. We can do professional development for you in that space. You also can guide that as a team. But as long as they've had that proper professional development and readiness work done, they should be able to click into these 30 to 60 seconds before and teach them. We all know why that needs to be the case, because that is when many of them are going to click into it next. And so it needs to be really easy to implement, right? We're talking tier 1, which means all in the ideal setting. Here's that relationships first slide where you've got each of these different choices of activities, many of which you can come back to multiple times during the first half of the year. I mentioned Deck of Destiny. So here's a fun one. In fact, let me bring up the chat for myself. Anybody, the first person that's in the chat, give me a card, any card in a deck of cards. The 8 of Hearts is the first one I saw. As the teacher, the slide deck is different. Instead of just like going to the next slide in order, if it's the 8 of Hearts that's selected, I click the heart, I come to the 8, and there's a specific question that has already been designed for that specific card. So there's a lot of cards in a deck of cards, right? Each one has a different question. As simple as it may be, it increases that engagement factor with the randomness of it, the choice aspect. And so this could be a just single question starter for a lesson that we're doing or to start the day. It could be 2 to 3 minutes. There also could be the 20-minute version of this, where we do multiple rounds on Deck of Destiny in a single class period or an advisory period. The next student might pick the 5 of Clubs, and it has a specific question that person might answer live, right, on this kind of a setting. And then maybe the rest of the class types their answer in the chat or in a shared document. Lots of different ways. The way that you could do this asynchronously is do a simple 30 to 40 second screen recording where you click into the actual Deck of Destiny, pick the card, and then ask them to respond in whatever shared document or Google form or whatever it is that you're using for that day for processing. One tip that's exciting on these is one way to onboard your staff is do these activities with your staff. Deck of Destiny is a great one to do with adults. It can increase engagement on staff meetings, even if they're virtual or in person. And in doing it with your staff, you're also onboarding them on how to actually use the tool. Picture prompts is another fun one. Notice in the upper left-hand corner, it's got the schoolhouse icon and the computer screen. That means you don't need to do any adapting. This was designed for in-person or virtual, and it's a different way of community building or get to know. This one is choose a box to reveal a picture like A6 or C3. Use the picture to inspire a 30 to 60 second story to share about yourself. So if I go to C3 and I click on it, this image comes up. Lots of different ways you could have processing happening here, but the idea is you got to think on your feet, 30 to 60 seconds, share a story or an example of how this image connects with you. The reason why it works so well is they want to know what kind of images are behind the different boxes. So you come back to multiple times, another fun way to engage students and or staff. If I go to the upper right-hand corner and click on that, it comes back to this main screen again. GTKYFITB, everyone always asks about, stands for Get to Know You, fill in the blanks. Every one of these icons represents a different icon, kind of like the old Mad Libs, but it's a different way of introducing yourself. It's fun, it's silly, but we need that when there's not a lot of positive that's happening. And so in this one, if we were doing it live, it could be typing it in, or it could be sharing live, or if we were in person, it might be turned to a partner, but you could share a different one of these each day, or you could do multiple rounds of it. But now you introduce yourself by thinking on your feet and filling in the blanks. And every one of these different icons would have a different, here's the dinosaur, way that you could do that. If I was doing it live, like on a Zoom session, I might ask someone, they pick the icon, that student fills in the blanks, and then I might ask a follow-up question before picking another student who could pick a different icon. They might say, I want the angry looking carrot. And so it goes to the carrot, and then they would introduce themselves this way. So lots of fun ways that you could use this. Here's a great example of one that was initially designed for in-person, 6-foot salutation. The schoolhouse icon is telling me that this is the in-person version of this activity. Bottom right-hand corner, there's a next button, so I could click that to finish the instructions. But if I want the virtual adaptation of this, I just move to the schoolhouse icon and click on it, and it moves to the computer screen. This is the same activity in a way that you could do it virtually. So the key here is we've done that work for you. You do not have to do that adapting because that's a major roadblock. Some of them are fun like that. Some of them are more serious. Here's a list of COVID questions. We are going through this together. So I'm not going to start with this one, but eventually it might be that I bring this one up, share your name, choose one or more of the prompts to reflect on. This could be written and it just to the teacher. It could be written where people can share. It could even be a conversation that we have. But these options are here laid out for you, ones that you can come back to. Any given week, we'll always have a recommendation of one for each week, but this is a great example of how this is laid out. Scavenger hunting, I think, was the recommended one here. This one's fun because there's lots of different ways you can do scavenger hunting. You don't always have to go find a physical object. They could also find something on the internet. There's different ways, but each one of these has a different list that you could go back to. So like the fast list. And they have a certain amount of time to find as many of these things, either actual physical or virtually, and then people can share. So these you could do in person, you could do it virtually, but we've designed a lot of these fun interactive type of activities for the teacher to implement. If I want to jump to the content area at the bottom, I just click on the brain, and this lesson's title is to-do list versus to-be list. The scope and sequence for these lessons early on, the first 16 weeks, it starts with values clarification. Who is it that you want to be? What is most important to you? And then in lesson 3, it's going to allow us to ask the question, great, well, what gets in the way? What gets in the way of us being the ideal version of ourselves? And Dr. Michelle Borba many times has shared things like fear, anxiety, stress, which is kind of rampant right now. And so what then it will allow us to do is start to dig our lessons into going deeper into the emotional work, lessons on stress, coping, resiliency skills. And then coming out of that, we're going to start to have lessons that focus on empathy, empathy plus action, allow us to dig into how do we start to have some of these hard conversations that we're facing right now in our society through the lens of empathy. But all of us are going to have an intentional through line with these new lessons for the year that we're recommending right now that all of our schools do as kind of a year 1 track. This lesson could be its own 10-minute content area focus, something that you should be able to do with little to no prep. And then at any point at the bottom, you can move to the character dare process. In the early lessons, we've actually built instructions into the slides to help for fidelity. The way that the character dare process works and why it works so well is this. Each week they get a challenge. Each one of those challenges in the new lessons is directly connected to the content area focus of the week and a practical way to put it into action. Because it's called a character dare, the processing is a play on the idea of a dare. It's the truth or dare reflection. Here is why it works so well. Students are not required to do the character dare challenge each week. It is okay that they don't do it. We're not going to grade them on whether they do it, but we are going to still have a high expectation, which means if you didn't do it, that's all right. Speak your truth. What do you think about it? In your mind, what makes this last week's character dare challenge hard or easy? Did you agree with it? Did you like it, dislike it? Whatever it is, speak your truth. Or if you actually attempted it, dare, I did it. Here's what happened. Here's what I learned about myself or others. The teacher's job, facilitate. Acknowledge what students are sharing. ask good questions. And so last week, the character dare backed on a research-backed strategy, which is this: it's hard to have a negative thought and a positive or grateful thought at the same time. There's a lot of negative thoughts happening right now. Over the next week, try to see one new thing each day that is positive and record it somewhere, write it down, take a picture or video. There's some subtext there. And then we create a space for that conversation to happen each week. Coming out of that conversation, here's our new character dare for the week connected to this week's lesson. It's a commitment character dare. Over the next week, try to create a daily to-do list and to-be list with at least 2 items on each and aim for 100% completion for 5 consecutive days. That's our challenge for the week. As a school, you could brand it, you could be pushing it out, you could be putting it on your school social media, lots of different ways, but you can get behind it as a building to have that focus on things that we can control and things that we could be doing to move forward together. Every lesson will have a quote, a design quote that we can discuss that connects to the lesson, kind of a closure activity. And yet, once again, at the bottom, at any point, I can jump to any one of those different components, including back to the relationships first slide. This might be a good time for me to pause and see if there might be some questions that have been coming in. There's other parts that I can discuss, but let me bring up my document and see. It says, can you share again about the coming back lessons? Number of new ones being added all year. Yes. Right now, the first month is up. I believe it's on the 12th or 13th. We can even potentially put it in the chat. We have when each next month is being dropped, but within the next 3 to 3.5 weeks, the first 16 weeks of the year are going to be up with these new lessons. This is on top of the lessons that are already there. The normal lessons that we have also have a slide deck. If I click into grade 6, lesson 8 as an example, here's an example of one of our normal lessons. This one's growth mindset overview. This is the preview mode of the lesson that teachers can, skim through. If they want to watch a video, they can preview it there. If they want to click on an image, they can click on it. But there's a slide deck in both English and in Spanish that they could click right into to teach the lesson. Those are already there, but this year we're going to have 16 to start the year of the new lessons. And we're going to be going to work on the second half of the year, especially as we monitor if we have schools that are still in a virtual or hybrid type setting. See if another question is here. How do these lessons work with the relational roadmap lessons? For those of you that maybe didn't attend a recent training we did called the Returning Relationally Roadmap, it's a lot of R's training. The way that these connect is this. You don't need the curriculum to be able to do the roadmap activities. Those are built to be all sorts, a whole encyclopedia of relational activities that you could implement from a school-wide lens, from the different people that are supporting students within your building, from classified staff to the custodians to the administrators. That roadmap is built to be something where school-wide you're doing relational moves, but the curricula is the explicit instruction. If you were to look at how it braids, both of those are key aspects of a strong tier 1 foundational set of supports. And so that's how it would come together. Both should be getting implemented. The lessons, usually it's more of a once a week type of setting. Some of our schools, they're like, we're meeting 4 times a week, but it's only for 10 to 15 minutes each time. You can implement these new lessons easily in that 10 to 15 minutes, 4 times a week type of setting because of that interactive nature. Someone said 1 per week. Yep, that's the way I would look at it. 1 lesson per week, but it could be broken up into multiple touch points in that week. Is this included with our current subscriptions or is it an additional fee? Yeah, going back to the beginning, there's no added cost to that. These automatically get added for our users. It's one of the things that we pride ourselves on, being responsive, always updating so that it is relevant and engaging, especially at that secondary level. And so if you're a school that purchased the curricula 2 years ago, this is just a part of your normal renewal cost, which is $4.99 a year. So the renewal is a significant drop. There's no added cost for these new lessons, which is going to end up being an entire new curriculum for you as well. Let's see, we're going to have advisory for 10th through 12th grade broken down by grade level, all virtual. Would you start with the student stress lessons you just showed? I would start with the coming back lessons. We do have in our scope and sequence, there are some student stress sessions that we did during COVID, these would be separate. You might find different ways that you could utilize these, but I did not just show these. They are a part of it. This is where we brought 6 different students together from different backgrounds, different walks of life, who went through a 5-week session together, where each week they met back together and discussed what they were going through, what they had learned in the 10-minute like kind of mini lesson with Houston each week, our co-founder, and then gave a real authentic kind of reflection on how that was going for them. These would be separate. You could implement them in different ways, but they could be standalone lessons as well. My recommendation, to be clear, is that our schools do the coming back lessons this year school-wide. That's our recommendation. You can do what you want, though. You can control that. You've got the lessons that are normally there that are a part of our normal scope and sequence, but we recommend to do the lessons that were designed for the virtual hybrid setting and really hyper-focused on the immediate needs right now around stress coping resiliency skills. That would be the recommendation. Let's see here. Next question. Are the lessons in Spanish as well? Yes. The first 4 are in the curriculum site, both in English and in Spanish. Every lesson that we create, just like our normal set of lessons that are there, all have an English and Spanish slide deck. So that is something that we will continue. What is the general length for a lesson? Our normal lessons are written to be 30 minutes in length. These new ones can expand or contract as needed. I would say, the longer length would be right around that 30-minute version, but you could do a 10-minute lesson, right? Just on the community building. You could do a 2 to 3 minute, one question, kind of get to know starter, and then jump right into the content area and have right around a 13 to 15-minute lesson. So you've got much more flexibility. They need to be that way this year because it's going to be harder to keep people's attention when it comes to that virtual setting. Someone said, I teach health. If my whole school isn't interested in doing it for advisory, could we purchase just for my class? Would there be a cost difference? So we don't sell it by individual class. It's important that you know that this was built for that school-wide approach. So if you have like specific questions on how we could provide some tools that you could use, we do have something called the Character Strong Gym. Let me go here now because it's kind of a good introduction to that provides multiple tools and resources at a less price. If a school purchases the gym with the advisory curriculum, it becomes a one-time investment of $249 with no ongoing renewal because the advisory would cover it. If you were just buying the gym, it's $499 and it's an annual cost. And what comes with it are resources for staff, students, and families. And so this might be something that you could use as a supplement to your health curricula, but we don't sell it by individual class because the intent of the curricula is tier 1, which means all students being exposed to it. And in the ideal setting, all staff implementing it. We do have many schools who the counselor is still doing the push-in model as they're working to get to that place of tier 1. And that is the other type of model that we'll see a lot. In the gym, just so you know, once again, probably 95% of our schools that use the advisory curriculum use the gym. One of the things that's in here is 2 years worth of what we call staff character dares. I showed you an example of the student ones. What the staff character dares are really proactive relational strategies, many of which are focused on staff to student. Some are focused on staff to staff. Some are focused on staff to families. The reason why these work so well is that they're not you have tos. They're just practical strategies that you could push out once a week as a reminder. I love this one. The student becomes the master. This could be done virtually or in person. If it was in person, I could give out maybe a note card or I could just add it as an entry task. And I remember doing something very similar to this in my classroom when I was at the high school level, and there was a student I was really struggling to connect with. And I remember that Connor put on his card, Magic the Gathering, which I had no idea what that meant. I was like, what's Magic the Gathering? But good thing there's something called Google. So I looked it up. Literally took me 10 minutes that night to find out that it was a strategy fantasy card game. And I've shared this before if you've been at our trainings. And all I needed was 1 or 2 pieces of information about this to be able to then engage on going with Connor. And so I found out that there was different colored decks and that those different colored decks did different things. There was the green deck and the red deck and the black deck. And so the next day when Connor's coming through the door, I'm like, hey, Connor, come here. And I always joked that he thought he was in trouble. and say, hey man, I noticed that you put on your card yesterday, Magic the Gathering. In fact, I've been thinking about getting into that game for a while now. And I was just wondering, like, would you go with the red deck? I mean, it's pretty good because it can do this. Or would you go with the green deck? Because I'm kind of interested. For about a half a second, I had him. But what was really cool about that moment is we now had something to connect on outside of school. And I always say that don't think that I didn't go buy a deck at one point. Don't think that I didn't challenge him at one point at lunch to play Magic the Gathering, which he did destroy me. But it also is amazing and interesting how many staff just need ideas like this, especially when times are stressful. They need reminders like this of different things that we could be doing to connect. In fact, one of my favorite quotes is, we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. So there's 2 years worth of staff character dares. There's an entire year of admin character dares, and we're adding a second set of those. Admin are leading the work. These are just examples. Once again, admin to staff, admin to students, admin to families, things that you could do or that might spur other ideas to be proactive in a relational way. There's also an entire year of family character dares. Real practical things that you could send out. Not a lot of families read these long letters that we send home, but what if they knew that they were going to get a specific challenge for the week, something that they could do? Sometimes we just need excuses. Sometimes we just need a reason to do something. I love this one, family bucket list. Sit together as a family this week. See if you can brainstorm a list of 25 things you want to do together this year. And I'm always reminded that none of these require money. Entire year of family character dares that are included. There also are those student stress sessions that are in here. There's also an activity and video library. So picture at some point we are going to be back. We hope sooner rather than later. The activity library is really cool. Let's say that I'm a high school science teacher, and we've been, and it could be middle school as well, but let's say I'm a high school science teacher, and we've been doing these advisory lessons that put a focus on community building, relational focus. And I know that I can't do those in my science class because kids are going to say we already did them, but I want to build community in my science class, but I don't know how. I don't have like a toolbox of activities like I see, Mr. Bartell over there always doing. So I come into the activity library and I click on grades 9 and 10 and 11 to 12, because that's my grade level. And the time I want to give to this activity is only, let's say, 1 to 10 minutes. And you'll notice what starts to happen. And the group size for this activity I want is not an individual, not a partner. I want this to be a small group activity. And the risk level I want for this is low because they don't know each other very well. And the type of activity I want, not a debrief, not an energizer, not an icebreaker. I want it to be a get to know activity. And based on how I just tagged it, 8 activities come up. I might click on that's me and not like it. That's all right. I might click on the reception line though and say, I could do this. Materials, none. Simple set of instructions. Here's an optional activity and then a debrief. Now, what's the big difference here? Well, these weren't necessarily designed right away to be in a virtual or hybrid setting. All of our new lessons have been. These might take some adapting, but at some point we're going to be back, and our schools that are using this know that this is a tool that their teachers can go to. There's both an activity library as well as a video library. So using the same type of tagging feature, if I'm looking for a clip on commitment or a clip on empathy, I could click on, how much time I have, what grade level, what I'm looking for, and then maybe 6 different video clips might come up. Another thing that is in here, we have 5 restorative practices through a tier 1 lens that you could utilize in here as a school. Many of you are already doing work in this area, but I want you to see what's here. They follow the same type of format. Community building circles, what is it? What's the purpose of it? Why do it? Here's some tips for implementation. Here's what ages it works for. Here are the equity principles that connect to it. Here's the proof, the evidence backing it, and then if there's any additional resources. So there's 5 of those that are included. There's some posters. There's a 30-day kindness challenge. What's unique about this? We put this out. This is Houston, our co-founder, kind of a kickoff video. But every one of these activities can be done in 10 minutes or less, and it was built for a virtual or hybrid setting. So these are things that families were engaging in, students were engaging in of all ages. There's a lot of fun things that you could do. We have entire districts that are putting these out as images on their school, like social media account, challenging people. So you could choose a month, have fun with it, and do a 30-day kindness challenge. That's included in the gym. There's also virtual assemblies. Before I come back to some questions that are in the chat, we took all 8 of the different traits that we focus on in our curricula, and then we put together virtual assemblies that we did over 9 weeks at the beginning of when COVID started. What's cool is each one of these presenters or musicians that participated, we have their individual video of their presentation and a processing document that goes with it. Chris Singleton, former Major League Baseball player. He's an author. His mom was killed in the Charleston Town Church Massacre. And he speaks on forgiveness. Incredibly powerful. I saw him at a student leadership conference right before March. And he spoke to thousands of middle school, high school students. An incredible message. Kate Garnes used to work for Disney as a national speaker. Samir is on the band Young the Giant, and he had a musical performance that was directly connected to the trait of the month, which is forgiveness. So lots of different things that you could do with the gym, and we're always adding to the gym as well. Let's go back to the questions here that might be in the chat. Let's see, we're gonna start CS in our high school. Do we start with the entire student body all doing 9th grade lessons, or do we start with everyone doing their own grade level? That's a great question. So I'm going to answer it 2 ways. One, my recommendation once again this year is that everybody does the virtual hybrid lessons that we've designed, that you would do that as a year 1 track. Over this next year, a lot of the new pieces that have become so popular and that we're getting such great feedback on are going to be inserted into our normal scope and sequence of lessons. If for some reason you're not choosing to do the virtual hybrid lessons, you can choose. You can choose to drop them right in their grade level, or you can do a year 1, year 2, year 3 track if you're at the middle level, or at the high school year 1, 2, 3, 4. One thing that influences that a lot is if your advisory type of like gathering or homeroom is by mixed grade level, then you would want to do it more year 1, year 2 type of track. I wouldn't call it the 9th grade lessons. I would call it the year 1 track, the year 2 track, so on and so forth. Just to be clear, it says you're recommending 1 coming back lesson per week, but are the regular grade level lessons intended for daily use? Great question. The lessons that we have, whether it's the new ones that we've created or the normal scope and sequence, the original design of them was more of a once a week implementation. However, both sets of lessons, there is a way to easily customize them where if your advisory meets more than 1 time a week, they can be customized to be implemented over multiple times in a week, but you still look at it as 1 lesson per week that would then be implemented over those 2, 3, or 4 sessions. And we can help you with that. I'm on calls regularly, implementation calls with schools who are interested, where we can talk about your specific scenario. Our team could even drop into the chat my calendar link, where you can sign up for a call either as an individual or your team. And right now, those are getting taken up very quickly. I had 22 of them on Monday. Let's see, where can you find the coming back lessons? Again, they're gonna show up in the normal tab. So when I click on advisory, they're gonna show up. This is full permission, so I have both the middle school and high school. But if you are just high school, it's gonna show up as a tab on the left-hand side. The first month is up, and the second month is about to be dropped as well. They're all done. It's just the design feature of making sure that all the different links work and all of that, that'll be a part of that. Let's see, watching the time closely. These are great questions. It says, any copywriting issues with us posting character strong related images on our social media? That's a great question. The one thing that you don't want to do is post the entire lesson on your social media. But when it comes to like images, like it's the, you know, those 30 days of the kindness challenges or your weekly character dare, please do. We want that to happen. That is okay. Get it out there. It's a positive messaging thing. It's a way to remind your students. It's a way to put a positive focus to your families to see what you're doing. Please do share those. If you ever have any questions about that, you can always personally reach out. The only thing that we don't like is if you're just like, here's the lesson we did this week and you just post it on an open forum. That would be a no-no. But other than that, posting the images of different things you're more than welcome. Are there videos, lessons on race and social justice? That's a great question. So here's where we're pushing in on that, because you need to do that very intentionally. One, we do an equity audit on our curricula every year. We've got a lead consultant on that. We're also putting together right now an equity advisory panel to really guide and look at what we're doing. So we have multiple voices at the table representing what it is that is happening and how it's happening, because there's a way to definitely do that wrong. Our lessons are going to go from a focus on kind of the stress coping resiliency skills to intentionally diving into the topic of empathy. But within that empathy component, we're going to start to bring in pieces that would connect to issues around social justice and equity. But once again, we want to do that in a very intentional way, because that can definitely blow up. Here's an example. What if you're not doing the staff work? The staff work that is ultimately the key to all of this. If you're not doing the staff work and you put something in front of a staff member who's not ready to implement it, right? You got to have both that are happening. And so we actually are going to be coming out very soon. We've already done the background work for it, but in an equity on demand course, kind of Equity 101 with Aaron Jones, who's a partner of ours, where schools can be doing in an asynchronous way and guiding it themselves, where they're coming back to it, but something that would help with the adult work that would directly connect to what we're doing. And then we're going to gradually be bringing in not only into our lessons so that it's an intentional through line, but also working on a separate set of support lessons. So when we're moving into, for example, an election season that isn't looking like it's going to be an ugly next few months because there's so much divisiveness. So how do we even provide tools to have civil discourse, right? In our high school lessons, there's an intentional set of civil discourse lessons, but we're going to provide more of those tools so that depending on where you're at as a building, you could utilize these in different ways. So you will see us providing multiple of those, both as an intentional through line in our lessons, connecting it to the work, as well as separate, even more direct and explicit things that you could be implementing depending on your level of readiness. The on-demand PD, are those just modules that come with the program that are accessible to help train staff at any time? So the on-demand PD, I'm going to click into that. It's different. It's a separate product. Anything that's professional development is separate. It's not required, but we can support you in that area. So there's kind of different levels. The least expensive way would be to go onto our website. We do lots of webinars. All of our past webinars are on there, from walkthroughs to different topic areas. We did one with Dr. Michelle Borba that's like a mini training all in itself. And there's no cost on that. You can go on there. You can find that. There's a lot of resources. The next level would be the on-demand PD. The on-demand PD is a building license for the year. It's $999. And you get multiple courses. So one thing that you get is the entire year one PD model in an asynchronous way of our Character Strong curriculum. So Houston and I have put this together professionally, where there's, in this case, usually 10-minute or less videos that come with processing worksheets, as well as we've put together, if we've ever done a blog that connects to that topic, or if we've done a podcast on that topic, we've put all those and curated them for you. So that's an entire 11-module course. We've also partnered with Dr. Clayton Cook, and this is the value out of the on-demand PD. There's a lot of trainings here for your staff. The most popular one is the Stress Coping and Resiliency for Educators course. So when we talk about the need to do adult SEL work, this is an actual university course. At the University of Washington, Dr. Clayton Cook put it together. He's now at the University of Minnesota. And there's an 11-module course that you could go through with your staff that gives not only kind of the understanding, the theory, but also real practical things that they could be doing, because we know that it's not just students that need this work, it's also adults. Many of our schools are providing this for both classified and certified staff. In Washington State, where we are, classified staff are required to get 14 hours of continuous professional learning. And so they're using this with classified, they're using this with their certified staff. That's a course that's in here. Every one of them has a guided note connected to it. There's also a course on student behavior, looking at it functionally. There's one on EMR, which is an evidence-based strategy on establish, maintain, restore relationships. There's a course on responding with empathy to low-level behavior using the prompt method. There's also all of our Whole Child Virtual Summit videos that we did in April. We had over 30,000 people register for this event. All of those videos are here. So whether it's our presentation with Dr. Angela Duckworth, or our presentation with Dr. Michelle Borba, who I mentioned, all of those are in here, and they could be kind of on-demand individual PD that you could use. We've got a processing worksheet as well as a synopsis of their talk that is included. So all of that is in the on-demand. It can be used to support the work, including the year one course on how to implement our curricula. We also can lead live virtual sessions, half day or full day. And then eventually when it's safe to do so, we do a lot of actual in-building PD where we come to you. That's a different kind of training than the ones we offer during the year that are for your teams. How do we continue to implement and get traction in this work? Let me go back, see if there's any final questions. Here's one, let's see. Is it fairly intuitive how to break up a lesson across the week? Our school will have daily advisory. Are there recommended stopping points, or will we need to design that at the building level? You always want to have a team, because the research says that teaming matters, that is guiding the work. But here is a way to look at it if you need it to be really simple, because we understand that many times we do, right? There's 3 main components to these new lessons. So if I click back into the coming back lessons and I go to lesson 4, how emotions work, when I click into this, 4 parts to the lesson: the community building, the content area, and then the character dare. Here's a way to look at it if you have 4 lessons for the week. First day, community building. Second day, content area. Third day, character dare. Fourth day, options. And that option might be that we're going to do another community building activity and then come back to a certain aspect of the content area, or we're going to go back to a community building activity and then come back to the conversation on our character dare. There's lots of different ways you could do it, but if you need it to be simple, you could look at it as each one of those sections could be your time. Now, how much time do you have during that session? Those are the different things that you need to be considering. But there are multiple ways that you could really clearly and have a consistent way that they do that each week. Let's see. How much is the advisory curriculum in the Character Strong gym again? Okay, so unless you have a really unique setting, which I would encourage you to reach out if you feel like you're in this case, an example of a unique setting, a school recently that reached out, they said pre-K through 12th grade, we have 44 students. That's unique, right? 4 graduating seniors. Reach out to us if you're in that. But if you're a normal kind of comprehensive size, middle school or high school, in that case, the upfront cost of the advisory curriculum is higher. It's $3,999, but then it drops significantly in year 2 and beyond. So in year 2, it's $499 is your renewal. It stays that. It doesn't change no matter what we add to it or update. It's $499. So when you look at it many times on how curriculums are priced, over 3 years, a lot more inexpensive than where you might be paying the same price each year over. So the upfront investment is higher and then it drops significantly. If you want to add the gym, that's a big value add. So it becomes just a one-time cost of $249. So the upfront, $3,999. If you add the gym, $249. There's no annual renewal for the gym. Stays $499. If you just have the advisory, it's $499. If you get the advisory in the gym, it's $499. In year 2, it doesn't change. We also do ways that you can bring down that upfront cost is obviously there's different bundling things that we have for products. If you bring multiple schools together, like if it's a district-wide purchase, that is a way that you can definitely bring down the upfront cost before moving to that $499 annually. Do you have any recommendations on grading lessons or how to hold the students accountable for completing the dares or other challenges? I don't want to grade. I'm asking because other teachers in my building will want to know how we plan to hold students accountable for participating in the program, as we will have a dedicated skinny block for CS curriculum. All right, great question. We don't want to go into the grading. I get that we want accountability. The way that I would encourage you to try to get more participation is that right now we're craving connection. Consider the law of the lid. Don't ever expect students to bring more to the room than what you're bringing as the educator. When people ask me, how do we get more student buy-in? The number one answer, get more staff buy-in. The number one thing that you need to do, that would be the goal, but how you would grade this, if you ultimately want to do it, is I would do it through reflections. Required reflections that they have to turn in what they're learning. If that is where you're going to go, if you need that, then have it be reflections. It doesn't require them to have done the character dare each week. In fact, they could have done 0 of the character dares, but as long as they're reflecting on what they're learning, you give them some specific prompts, some sort of a journal that goes on what they're reflecting on, what they're learning would be the way to do kind of that accountability process or grading if you have to. I do not recommend that, but if you do that and you need that for accountability, that is what you could do. Let's see, do you have any recommendations? Okay, let's see, that's the second one. Have you noticed differences between schools that do grade level implementation versus 1, 2, 3? No, I've seen it done both ways. What I have seen as a consistent piece is this. Those that are really intentional with implementation have better results. Those who said, here's the password, good luck, don't have as good of results. Those who have a team that guide the work and have a way where they're getting feedback constantly from staff and then are being responsive to removing roadblocks, problem solving, figuring things out, helping their staff, role modeling lessons. Those who have a principal and an admin team who are going in and co-teaching lessons each week so that they know what's going on, they always get better results. Those that are being more intentional with how they're implementing always get better results. Those who realize that there's zero research to back up that something's going to take perfectly in the first year have better results because they look at it as 3, 4, 5 years of implementation and how we're going to gradually get there versus this too shall pass. We've all heard that before, but the problem is there's zero research to back that up, that something's going to take in a year. So what's our gradual plan? The difference is in how you implement. Are we doing the staff readiness work that's needed, making time for it, being responsive to their needs? That is what will get you better results. And we can help you all along the way. If you have like in your planning, you're like, we want to meet now. We've been doing some planning. We've got like a few questions. You can sign up for a call. We'll meet with you. We'll talk with you about that. That's one thing that makes us unique is that we focus just as much on the implementation supports as we do what's being taught because kids can't benefit from something they don't receive. What package will the Equity on Demand be a part of? It'll be its own standalone product because all of the proceeds of that are going to be to specifically supporting causes and not coming financially back to Character Strong. So it's going to be its own product. We're going to have an intentional way that we're rolling that out so that we're also supporting the work moving forward on the financial side that comes from that product. And we'll let you know more about that when it comes out. It should be soon. How do we use student session stress? I see a tab for it. I would look at them and then talk about how you want to implement them. It might be something that you use early on. You might do one a day for the first 5 days of like week 2 and have them as their own standalone kind of mini unit. My recommendation would be look at them and then decide how you'd like to use it. It's a supplemental set of supports, but it could be its own mini lesson. Will leadership curriculum be adapted for online teaching as well? In terms of bandwidth, no, it's way more involved, but what we are going to do for our leadership teachers is this. Lots of our student council advisors and leadership teachers are struggling right now with how do I engage my student leaders? How do I adapt this in different ways? We're going to be bringing together some champions in the student leadership world from different states, different backgrounds, and be getting the juices flowing. We're going to be doing some brainstorming around what are some things that we could do, what are ways that we could do this, and then taking from those focus groups that we will probably do live so people can attend and listen to and ask questions, and then doing a synopsis of those and pushing those out to our leadership teachers to really guide what we could be doing on the student leadership side of things. All right, it's a lot of good questions. Let's look. It says, can you talk a bit about student advisory group? What role does it play in the Character Strong model? You know, I'm going to, not knowing exactly what you mean by that, but a student advisory group, if it's similar to like a principal's cabinet or getting that group, that would be component 4 of our theory of change. Component 4 of the theory of change is what if we took a smaller group, right? And we're pouring into them, mentoring into them, getting their voice to help guide, because when doing that, they're more likely to, one, influence the students that are in your school, as well as to demonstrate the pro-social behaviors we want to see. I would use that advisory group as that student kind of leadership piece. It's even taking the lens in our leadership curriculum, we ask this question that we go through a servant leadership approach, that it's about identifying and meeting the legitimate needs of those that you're serving. Not necessarily their wants, but their needs. Well, that advisory group, what if that was the question that was posed? What are the legitimate needs that our students and our staff and our community have right now? And then brainstorm and talk about what are ways, even in a virtual or hybrid type setting, that we could be going to work this year to meet those identified legitimate needs that they have. That group could really help to influence that, to get ideas going on ways, and I would greatly encourage that process to happen, get that student voice going, because they can teach us a lot in ways that we could be connecting with students. Do you have specific lessons that teach students how to resolve conflict? Yep, within our normal scope and sequence, there are lessons that go to that. A lot of the work that we're talking about has a lot of those themes built into it in regards to the skill sets that are being developed. In our leadership curriculum, there's some specific units on conflict resolution as well. So we do have lessons that would go to conflict resolution or get to the core of that as well. All right, I think that we're right at the time, just a little bit over. We will follow up with you. If you have questions, please reach out. If you'd like to request a quote, you can do so. The team will put into the chat how you can do that, whether it's emailing us or filling out a link. But you can request a quote if you'd like to see what that might look like. My calendar link, I believe we put into the chat. We can put that in there again as well. If you want to talk, you can also email me, John, John, @characterstrong.com. If you have any direct questions, we're here to support you. We can get you set up really quickly on the curriculum to begin planning, because it is a virtual web-based product. So you can get going immediately on it by placing an order, because we know that everyone's getting back to school real fast here. Thanks for showing up, everybody. Appreciate your time.